United Lutheran Seminary presents the Seminary Explores podcast, conversations on faith, art, people, politics, theology, life, and more, with voices from around the corner and around the globe.
Good day. Welcome to the Seminary Explorers. My name is Nelson Strobert, and my guest today is Andrew Taminger, who is a third-year seminarian at United Lutheran Seminary on the Gettysburg campus. Welcome to the Seminary Explorers.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this opportunity.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. You attended most recently the assembly of the Lutheran World Federation. And I want to ask you, how did you get to go to this global event?
Absolutely. So the Lutheran World Federation holds an assembly once every 7 years, and a part of the seminary, they pulled together some finances and some grant funds in order to give seminary students across the ELCA an opportunity to attend this assembly. And so we had 5 seminaries represented, seminarians across the country that came together, and it was a really incredible opportunity, and I got to take it as a class as a part of my seminary studies.
Oh, so you got class credit for participating in this event?
Absolutely, yes. And it was one of the coolest seminary classes that I've had the opportunity to take in my journey so far.
I am sure. As I understand it, the Lutheran World Federation Assembly took place in Poland.
It did, yes. So this year it was hosted in Krakow, Poland by the Evangelical Church of the Augsburg Confession in Poland. That was our host church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I can give a little bit of history about the assembly.
Well, I'd like to, what is the Lutheran World Federation for our listening audience?
Yeah, so the Lutheran World Federation is a communion of Lutheran church bodies from around the world. There are 99 countries representing 77 million Lutherans across the world and 150 member churches. It was 149 before this assembly, but the Lutheran Church in Cambodia was recently appointed to the status of member church.
Oh, okay.
And so it's broken down into 7 regions around the world, including Africa, Asia, Central Eastern Europe, Central Western Europe, the Baltic or Nordic countries, and Latin America and the Caribbean, and North America. Those are the 7 world regions. And as I said earlier, it's hosted by a member church every 7 years, and this is the 13th assembly. And we gathered under the theme of one body, one spirit, and one hope, which is inspired by Ephesians 4:4, that there is one body and one spirit, just as you were called to one hope of your calling.
Okay. Thank you for that brief history. How did you prepare for this assembly? This is something, again, that happens, as you said, every 7 years. How do you prepare for something like a gathering like that as a student?
You know, it's kind of funny that you ask that, because I really didn't know what to prepare for coming into this experience. We were given resources by the assembly leaders, and they gave all of the delegates in attendance and the visitors. We were attending as visitors. They gave us all study guides based on prior assemblies, so that we could look at some of the old delegations and
right.
what their line items were and what their resolutions were that they were voting on. But beyond that, in the study guide and some worship material and just a basic background of Krakow, Poland, we didn't really have a whole lot to go off of, and it was something that there's really no amount of preparation you can try to gain to go into an experience like that. It's just something that you need to step in with an open mind to witness how big the church truly is.
Oh, okay. This was a global event, and were you in an assembly hall or in a church setting, or where did you gather?
So we gathered in this large congressional center that was right next to this river. It was this really beautiful, beautiful place in Krakow. And there was a 14th century castle, Wawel Castle, that overlooked our gathering space. But we met in this huge congressional hall where a lot of, I'm assuming, concerts are held and a lot of important meetings and such to the country of Poland gather together, and we had over 1,000 people from around the world who were assembled here, and it was really an incredible thing to witness. The visitors, we had to sit in the high balcony, and so we were overlooking this huge group of delegates who were on the main floor.
Right.
And then they had the panels that were along the front stage, but we were just little tiny ants up in the rafters, just overlooking this huge process that was unfolding before our eyes. It was really, really cool to witness.
Okay. An additional question is, did you meet other students, seminarians, while you were there from other countries?
We did. We didn't have a chance to meet formally with other seminarians from other countries, but the way that the assembly is structured, there's plenty of downtime and plenty of coffee breaks, a lot of coffee breaks, for people to just gather and have unstructured, informal conversation. And it's through those conversations that I had the opportunity to talk with both seminarians from other countries, as well as bishops and heads of church from other countries, just gathering in the meal times and in the coffee lines. Oh. And it was a very wide spectrum of people and experiences.
Oh, good. Oh, good. As you reflect on your time at the assembly, what might be some of your personal highlights from the event?
About halfway through the assembly, we had the opportunity to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. And it was a structured part of the assembly, a part of the ongoing efforts of reconciliation and reparations to Jewish communities that were impacted so greatly and in a lot of places in Europe wiped out as a part of the Holocaust and the Nazi extermination of the Jewish people. And we got a chance to get a tour of the grounds, and that was it was a really heavy experience and
Sobering.
A very moving experience in many ways. And one of those experiences that I don't know if I'd ever have the capacity to go back, but I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to witness that. And
right. A colleague and I led a group of students years ago, and we went to Buchenwald, and it's something that you're glad that you had the opportunity to see. It's sobering, and yet not something that it's not a tourist. It's different than tourism. Mm-hmm. Put it that way. Yeah.
It's a pilgrimage in ways, and that's the way the assembly really approached it as well. This journey of sojourning in a way, just coming alongside and abiding and with one another as we all handled this exposure to such an awful event of history together, and we all handled it a little bit differently, but it was incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah. Wow. Certainly a highlight and sobering experience. When you think about the assembly itself, on the actions, were there important discussions that took place for you that you have highlights of?
Absolutely. The climate emergency was a big point of discussion throughout the assembly, and to the point where the youth delegation and youth in our terms of the ELCA has a bit of a different age range than it does in the global LWF terms. Youth is 18 to about 35. in the eyes of the LWF. And so the youth delegation actually held a strike in the middle of the assembly to raise awareness for many of the delegates and just to be a public face of the climate emergency.
How did that strike take place? Could you describe what a strike meant in that context?
Yes. So there was a presentation from an environmentalist who came forth and provided both data from around the world and just a stance on what must be done in order to address the climate emergency that many countries around the world are being directly impacted by. And at the end of the presentation, before we went on to go on for our lunch break, or I can't remember if it was a lunch break or coffee break, but two of the youth delegates came forward onto the stage, kind of unannounced. You could tell afterwards that it was kind of orchestrated, but it was a shock factor in a way to come forward and say, we are holding this demonstration and this wasn't in your regularly printed programs because we want to show the immediacy of the climate emergency and how it's impacting especially the younger generations that are coming and inheriting the church. And so afterwards, the youth created signs, and they proceeded. This congressional hall that we were in had maybe about 4 or 5 stories in it, so and with stairwells. And so they formed this line, this procession that proceeded to march throughout the entire congressional hall, and we sang songs together as we were holding signs and really being a witness to climate advocacy. And the president of the LWF and the general secretary, they were a part of this procession as well as many of the delegates, and they all gathered together at the bottom of this congressional hall, and everyone's singing and really embracing the moment, and it was very impactful.
Indeed.
It definitely set the tone for the rest of the assembly.
Indeed. Were there any other discussions that took place?
Yes. Women's rights and women's equality, especially in church settings, and women in leadership in church settings was another big topic of the assembly. Not all of it's about 80% of the member churches of the LWF ordain women, but there's about 20% that still do not ordain women, and so there is a continual push for a lot of those churches to see and uplift the ordination of women and women in leadership roles in the church and within greater society. And in addition to that, there were also topics uplifted that recognized a lot of disability advocacy and gender justice. And one of the most interesting parts was the centrality of language in the assembly that really came up, and what I mean by that is there was this quiet pushback against the dominance of English language within the assembly, in part because English is a second or even third or even fourth language to many of the participants in the LWF assembly. Although it's a widely spoken language, there were many delegations. So we all had earpieces that fed to live translators, and when a delegate came forward to speak towards a certain topic or something like that, if they were not speaking in a language that someone could understand or something like that, or if they weren't speaking in English, then people could put on their earpieces and listen to a live translator into their native language. And so many of the delegates came forward, and even though they could speak English, they came forward and spoke in their native language in order to call attention to the fact that English centrality maybe isn't the best way to conduct a meeting of such a global scale. So
Indeed.
That was a very interesting, and it was kind of a wake-up call for me, because I unfortunately only speak English, and I would like to learn more languages, but that was kind of an initial push for me to continue to pursue a secondary language.
And it certainly changes one's worldview.
Absolutely.
Once one goes across the ocean to see the differences in terms of language usage. That certainly is an interesting development that we wouldn't think about within these United States.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Were there other tensions that were exhibited or talked about or shared?
So since I fall into the age range of being a youth of the LWF, the topics that the youth were bringing up was something that my mind was immediately gravitating towards.
Right.
And so something that the youth delegation did bring up was issues of representation. And having younger individuals serving on more of the committees that the LWF represents, and not only representation, but also uplifting youth voices within the conversations that were happening, especially regarding theology and environmental talk and some of the issues that we brought up earlier. And so the youth continually reminded a lot of this is through comments on the floor and through passing their own resolutions. They were continually reminding the leadership of the LWF that they are still a very powerful voice, and certainly a voice that should be listened to.
Right. You mentioned the topic of theological issues. Could you share a little bit of that?
Absolutely. So the LWF, it was originally formed in, this is kind of going back a little bit to the history, but I'll get back around to the topic of theology. So it was originally formed in 1947, and this was after World War II and all of the reconstruction that's happening across Europe during that time. And a lot of that was the reconstruction of churches and church communities. And so a part of the formation of the LWF was humanitarian efforts, but then another part was to create a stronger theological confessing and communal presence of a Lutheran world body. And so the LWF, a big part of what they do is to further Lutheran theological standpoints and interpretations. And so they have panels where they will come together over a theological point of discourse or something like that, and they will find ways to articulate that in a way that the world Lutheran Church body and beyond that in the ecumenical realm as well can continue these dialogues.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that piece, and certainly a part of your theological development.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Which leads me to the question of how do you think your experience at the assembly might help you in your preparation for ministry in the Lutheran Church and in ministry in general?
One of the biggest things that the Lutheran World Federation Assembly taught me is how big the world truly is. And it can be easy to get so narrow-minded in our scope of ministry and the context of our congregations, but to see the church on a global scale as a part, and to expand the body of Christ to a global scale, and to witness that happening in one room was a really powerful representation of the full body and the full body of the church on that global level. And to see that and to then articulate that and convey that to others, especially in my ministry settings, is a really powerful way to expand our scope, not only of what the church is, but also in the scope of how we can serve our neighbor. It really extends the neighbor to a more global scale, and that was a powerful thing to witness.
Indeed. You've been highlighting the role of Lutheranism globally. I want to know, was this assembly limited to only Lutherans, or was there a broader representation or more other global voices that you heard?
So a big part of what the Lutheran World Federation does in its work, and a big part of this assembly, is the ecumenical scope. So the Lutheran World Federation, back in 1991, that's a significant year, with the Joint Declaration on the Doctrine of Justification,
right.
the JDDJ, where the Lutheran World Federation and the Roman Catholic Church came together in this Joint Declaration on the Doctrine of Justification and agreed. And it was this big monumental ecumenical movement that happened through the ongoing work that the LWF is committing to ecumenical research. And so the conversations around the JDDJ continued in the assemblies after the 1991 declaration.
Right.
And so it was still a big part of conversation in this 13th assembly that we were at. And it came to include other Lutheran World Communions, and I've got the list right here, so I want to make sure I get all of the names right. But the representatives that came to talk amongst the assembly included the representatives from the Roman Catholic Church, representatives from the Methodist World Council, the World Communion of Reformed Churches, the Anglican Communion, the Orthodox Church, and the Pentecostal World Fellowship, which is a very recent development of ecumenical dialogue that the Lutheran World Federation is engaged in.
Oh, okay. With that in mind, were there important actions that were taken by the assembly?
Yes, there were a number of resolutions that were passed and that concerned both LWF declarations, but also ecumenical declarations, and 17 resolutions in total. And it concerned things of assembly representation, like referring to the youth representation that was raised earlier, theological commitments to ecumenical dialogues, ongoing dialogues that go beyond the JDDJ. There was a rise of advocacy concerning indigenous populations around the world, rights for women, people with disabilities, refugees, the climate emergency, and lots more within those 17 resolutions. And there were also 4 public statements that were passed, which included the Christian involvement and presence in the Holy Land, which is very relevant with the recent conflicts that we've seen in the Holy Land. And it was a widespread condemnation of the violence that has now exponentially grown within that region, but also a promise of humanitarian support, which we're actually seeing the results of in the LWF's actual commitment to aid that is now helping people within the Gaza Strip, actually. And another public statement was the ethnic minorities facing oppression in Asia. It was a condemnation of that oppression that was occurring throughout countries in the Asian region. And there was a statement on tax justice that was passed, and equitable economic practices being called for in countries around the world. And of course the ongoing violence in Ukraine and the promise for humanitarian aid for countries that continue to support refugees from that crisis.
Oh, indeed. Wow. Well, I can't believe our time is rapidly ending, and I want to thank you for giving us a highlight and description of the work of the Lutheran World Federation.
Absolutely. And you can look up more information on the Lutheran World Federation's website. There's a lot more beyond what we've talked about in this interview. But thank you for your time and for this opportunity to share more about it.
Well, we thank you. My guest today has been Andrew Taminger, who is a third-year seminarian at the United Lutheran Seminary. And he's been talking about his participation as a guest at the Lutheran World Federation Assembly in Krakow, Poland. For the Seminary Explorers, this is Nelson Strobert. Have a good day.
You have been listening to The Seminary Explorers, a production of United Lutheran Seminary with campuses in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We invite you to visit our website at unitedlutheranseminary.edu. All opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of United Lutheran Seminary or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.